Hi everyone, welcome back to another Bandwidth Audio video. Really exciting day here. The 2845 amplifiers are done. And when I say done, I mean done. The design is finished up. We've got our couple of units here built up and we've been testing them and listening to them. And they just perform so awesome. This is just a totally awesome product. I couldn't be any happier, to be honest, with how these came out. Aesthetically, they look amazing. We've got tubes in the front here. We've got our custom-made, USA-made VU meters, large format VU meters in the front. Kind of match the look of our other products, but in a much bigger format meter to match the kind of the size of this chassis. For tubes, sorry for the glare, 6 SN7 first stage, 6 AH4 second gain stage, and then triode strapped EL34. This is a 6 CA7 in here, which I seem to like a lot. Triode strapped driver for the 845 output tubes. So as we go through the signal chain, you know, each step in the signal chain is more voltage swing and more power to drive the 845s with ease. And it really works. It works so good. Feedback switch. Can simply open or close the feedback loop with a flick of the switch there. Open loop definitely, or open loop performance is extremely good. But if you want a little bit of feedback, depending on what you're trying to do, and just change the sound or improve the performance slightly, there's the closed loop mode, which adds about 5.5 dB of negative feedback. And then we've got our hum balance potentiometers on left and right sides of the 845s. The 845s are AC heated, which arguably produces the best sound with these large format triodes, and I think so too. But we use a special hum balancing or hum bucking configuration for the hum balance potentiometers to basically set the center tap of the filaments. So this hum bucking arrangement basically allows the adjustment of one tube to cancel out the hum of the other and vice versa. So you can find a really nice minimum hum setting by turning these potentiometers. And the noise performance on this amp for a parallel single-ended directly heated triode 845 amp running AC filaments is amazing. In fact, the SNR at 50 watts open loop is right at approximately like 100 dB. And in closed loop with that 5 dB of feedback, we're getting to 105 or 106 dB SNR closed loop mode at 50 watts of output power. So this thing sounds incredible, really low noise, and quiet enough to use with even efficient speakers, even if you don't need all 50 watts. But man, is this thing linear, so even with, you know, really efficient speakers, you get such good linearity with the single-ended triode sound, and then 50 watts of output power capable for like just absolutely thunderous dynamics and just huge headroom capabilities, which is just a lot of fun and just totally awesome sound. You can see these wood sides here. This is obviously not any typical amplifier. This is a very special product, so we decided to do something a little bit different than the walnut that we typically put in our amps. This is Purple Heart, and actually selected figured Purple Heart you can see here. It doesn't show up super great in the camera, unfortunately. It's definitely more purple to my view, but the figuring in it is amazing. There you go. That's probably a little bit closer to how it looks to me. But these are just buttery smooth, really nice pieces to accent the chassis. They stiffen the chassis a lot, but they also serve as another function. And maybe those of you who have seen our products don't know this, but these, being really dense, stiff wood, absorbs a lot of vibrations. So those wood pieces actually act as almost like an energy absorber to keep the chassis from ringing and keeps everything really well damped. So they're functional too, and it works really well. We've got our big transformer cover with all of our magnetics that we've talked about in previous videos, so definitely go check those out where we talk through the power and output transformers in some detail. And then in the back we've got our 3 tube rectifiers. So 2 of the rectifiers here are used for the high voltage power supply, and then the last rectifier here is used for the low voltage power supply. And I say low voltage, I mean the preamp. This rectifier runs the preamp power supply. It's still running at 600 volts for preamp voltage, but I guess that's low voltage compared to the 1250-ish volts that we run the 845s at. And these work really well to control the startup, and just makes the power supply startup really smooth and is really kind to all the really expensive capacitors. I mean, this thing is half power supply, you know, and then half amplifying stages in the front. So you're spending a lot of money on a really good power supply as a large portion of the BOM cost in this amp. So you want to make sure that stuff lives and lasts a really long time, so the amp always sounds its best. And then in the back, we also have our analog ammeters for setting the output stage bias. That works really well, and it's just, you can just lean over the amp and see how your output tubes are doing and how well they're matched. Just turn it off if you want to disable the meters and pull them out of the signal path. And if you want to monitor the bias, just flip them back on. And then of course your bias adjustment here. This unit also has what will be an option for our customers. This has a XLR balanced input with a true balanced to single-ended conversion with a passive, really nice performing balanced to single-ended transformer. So that transformer gives you really good common mode rejection ratio for your really long cable runs, to get rid of noise if you've got, you know, your preamplifier really far away from your power amplifier and want to run a balanced connection. So if you don't order that option, this won't be populated, and we've got some block-off components to block off that feature. But definitely something nice to add, and wanted to have that incorporated in the chassis for our customers. And then, of course, your single-ended RCA input and your speaker connections. So it's also worth noting, this amplifier performs as good as it does, and there's no, you know, nonsense with the output transformer where you have to, you know, internally add jumper straps. Right from the exterior of the amp, you've got 4, 8, or 16 ohm speaker connections right available. So this is one of the things that, again, sets us apart, is like we get amazing performance out of our products. A single-ended amplifier like this that performs as well as it does, and I'll show that in a minute, with 50 watts of output power, and you get all the speaker taps on the output transformer right available to you. That's actually really hard to do from a magnetics design perspective. And a lot of the performance of this amp is down to the output transformer, and power transformer for that matter, but really the output transformer design being as good as it is. You know, it was a long road to get here, multiple iterations of both. You know, we didn't want to release this product unless it was anything other than exceptional, and I think it sure is, and I think it's one of the best performing and best looking single-ended tube amps on the market, period. And I think if you look at the specs of this, once it's on our website, you'll be hard pressed not to agree. So anyway, we've got it on the bench. It is warming up. It's been powered up for probably 10 minutes. One thing that's worth noting, and we kind of observed this pretty early in the design once we started working with these 845s, but these 845s being such large tubes, these are 75 watt capable power dissipation 845s, they're big and also have a ton of thermal mass. So because they have so much thermal mass to handle the power, that also means they've got a really long thermal time constant. So it actually takes them, you know, 20, 25, 30 minutes to get to full operating temperature. And it's not that they sound bad until they're, you know, if they're not fully hot, they just take a long time to settle down kind of to their steady state temperature. So just kind of one of the interesting things to keep in mind with one of these amps. So anyway, we've got it connected into an 8 ohm load and the AP is monitoring the 8 ohm load, and then we also have our oscilloscope monitoring the output. So just wanted to show a couple performance benchmarks while it's here on the bench. We are in open loop mode, and I've got it set up here to run basically 1 watt into 8 ohms. So I think I've got the volume down. If I turn the volume up, we've got our almost 1 watt here. Let me set 1 watt again by hitting this regulate to 1 watt. Amp's warmed up, so it's kind of performance has settled down a bit. So we're really close to 1 watt into 8 ohms. You can see our nice clean sine wave there. So at 1 watt open loop, we can take a quick look at the THD. You can see there we're at 0.41%. The amp settles down once it's fully hot to about 0.4 or even 0.39% THD, which honestly for an open loop single-ended amp is really good. I mean, that's about as good as you're going to get. And the distortion that is there is all second order because of the single-ended output stage. So it's not perceivable in any way, not even remotely close. So I just can't, emphasize how happy I am with how this thing works. It is worth noting though, these are, so I think I mentioned, these are 75 watt rated 845s. There are, well, they claim to be 100 watt 845s available from a Chinese manufacturer. And I say claim because the Chinese 845s are kind of hit and miss. And again, that's another long detour as part of this design project, was just understanding the state of manufacturing of 845 tubes. But basically what it comes down to is if the tube is big and in a package like this, they're kind of called an 845 by most manufacturers, even if they don't necessarily meet true 845 specifications. So that kind of remains to be seen, and so we're very careful which 845s we will run in this amplifier and ship with those who order these. But anyway, these being 75 watt 845s, we bias them really close to that 75 watt specification, and they run really hot, and they're happy to do so. We've had no issues, and we run them right where they should be. And they get to, the plate with actually my, you can see it here, my temperature gun. We measure about 200 degrees Celsius on these 845s, and they're perfectly fine. And they'll run there all day long and be happy to do so. With the 100 watt 845s, we can definitely turn up the bias a bit more and run the amp a lot hotter. And in fact, the power supply is designed for it. We've baked that into this amp. And what we've noticed though with that higher bias is the THD and performance just keeps improving. So here it's dropped down a little bit as the amp continues to warm up. But really the bias, the hotter you bias the output stage, the better this amp performs and the more linear it performs. So some point down the road it'll be really fun to try the 100 watt specification 845s and see if they truly handle the 100 watts without red plating, and really crank up the bias on this thing and just see how linear we can get the amp. But that also proves that this THD is the output stage distortion. The preamp distortion is so low, and we showed that in earlier videos, going back a couple years. The preamp distortion is so low, it's just out of the way. So is the output transformer. It's just out of the way. We're purely getting the performance, essentially, of the parallel 845 output stage, which is exactly what you want in one of these amplifiers. You want to be listening to, these glorious output tubes and not really have any other hindrance between them and kind of your speaker. So we've definitely achieved that. Other really impressive performance metric, and maybe even more so impressive than the THD, is the bandwidth of these amplifiers. So here we've got our 1 watt set. Let me just, again, it's shifting around a little bit just because it's coming up to temp. But we'll get it set closer to 1 watt. Let me set 1 watt as our reference. So There you go, 2.812 volts across 8 ohms is approximately 1 watt. So with that set, we can run a sweep. And so we'll plot the bandwidth relative to 1 watt from 100 kilohertz to 10 hertz with 100 steps. And there you can just see how well this thing performs. So minus 3 dB is 35, 36 kilohertz on the high end, and at 1 watt, maybe 10.5, 11 hertz, something like that on the low end, minus 3 dB. That's open loop. There's no feedback. We're not compensating for any, performance problems in the amplifier stages or the output transformer. This thing just runs so good and has such wide bandwidth, which is really kind of unheard of to kind of get this power level in an output transformer that has so much idle current running through the primary. And any of you that know anything about, magnetics or single-ended transformer design, this result is extremely impressive. Got plenty of inductance on the low end and really good, well-controlled leakage inductance and capacitance on the high end to get that performance. So really happy with it. If we close the loop and add 5 dB of feedback, our gain obviously drops by about 5 dB, because that's the amount of feedback that we're applying. So here we're now at 277 milliwatts. So if we click the regulate button, we'll bring the input voltage back up to get our 1 watt. Back at 1 watt. And now let's run it again, and we can just compare. Okay. So now we're running again in closed loop. You can see the performance is even better. And this is just with a fairly mild amount of negative feedback. 5 dB is not much, and in fact, you look at a lot of 845 amplifiers, they may not explicitly say so, but many of the single-ended and push-pull 845 amplifiers are closed loop. A lot of them on the market are, and they're applying, 10, 15, 20 dB of feedback to get the performance. So this just means the forward path or the native performance of the amplifier without feedback is so good. It just has massive bandwidth for a single-ended amp. And then with a little bit of feedback, the bandwidth just extends even more. Really impressive. So I guess the other thing we could try, let me move screens here. We can bring the power up to 50 watts. So instead of 1 watt, let me go back to open loop mode. So we'll show you how it performs 50 watts open loop. So put in 50, and then hit our regulation. And there you can hear the amp singing away. Actually, a lot of that singing is the 845 tubes themselves. They're so big that the plate structure inside can act as a little speaker. So you actually hear a lot of a steady state sine tone through just the slight micro vibrations of the tube itself. That's totally normal. That's what they do. When you play audio, of course that will be masked through speakers. You're never going to hear that, especially cranking along at 50 watts. You'll be deaf before you ever hear, by your speakers, before you ever hear this out of the amplifier. So anyway, we're near 50 watts. Let's set our reference. So 50 watts into 8 ohms is now 19.88. We're running away. Let's go check the bandwidth. And look at that. Full 50 watts minus 3 dB is 26, 27 kilohertz on the high frequency end, and on the low frequency end, we're at 13, 14 hertz. So again, that's just awesome performance. It barely changes 1 watt versus 50 watts, which is exactly, what we want. Amplifier just doesn't care. You know, it's like, just bring on the output power, it doesn't matter. And our THDN at full 50 watts is 3.7%. So, extremely good. I couldn't be happier with this thing. And it's just a mountain of work to turn, you know, to get a product like this together, not just build one, but get it ready to be an actual product. So I hope those following along who've seen the videos appreciate it. You know, we went through most recently the rectifier arcing issue and how we had to figure out which rectifier tubes were actually manufactured correctly. We've done our transformer testing, you know, huge amount of that, although we didn't film all of that, but, you know, we've got our specialty transformer testing equipment to measure primary inductance, leakage inductance, bridging capacitance, all sorts of things to get transformers where they are. And then all the, you know, initial design of the preamp to make sure we get the signal swing and enough current drive to drive the 845s without any like slew rate limiting distortion or any problems, such that, as I've already said, the preamp's just out of the way. You're really just getting the performance of the 845 output stage. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this. I'm really glad that this product's come together. It is worth mentioning that we'll have this, you know, on our webpage ready for orders pretty soon, hopefully in the next couple weeks. So be on the lookout for that. We'll have the full kind of specs and webpage done for this thing. And at that point, we'll be ready to take some orders. Unlike our other products, which we typically build in batches and definitely keep, you know, multiple in stock on hand at any one point in time, this amp is just too expensive, too unruly to kind of keep them in stock, unfortunately. But that's kind of where we're at. The BOM cost for a pair of these, right? This is just one. These are mono amps, so this is one channel. There's a sold in match pairs, so you'll have another one for the right channel. The BOM cost for a pair of these amps is just extraordinarily high, as you could imagine. And, you know, we worked on a, you know, direct to consumer model, which helps keep our pricing in check for the quality of product you get. You know, dealers definitely have serve a purpose and can do a good job, but the margin they add on, you know, really nice high quality product like this just makes them unobtainable expensive. So these are not going to be cheap, don't get me wrong, but hopefully they're obtainable for those who are really interested. Anyway, so that being said, we'll have this ready on the website. These will be built to order per customer. So we'll take a deposit for 50%, we'll build it, and then we'll ship it once we receive the remaining 50%. With that model, though, comes a few exciting things that we haven't been able to offer in our previous products, which are options. So one of them we already talked about was obviously the XLR balanced input. That's an option that will be available for those who want it. We also will probably have options for vacuum tubes, and we'll definitely have options for some capacitor upgrades, specifically signal capacitor package, and then an even better power supply capacitor package aimed at even more longevity of the power supply. And we actually worked closely with Mundorf, who supplied us with a kitchen sink of caps to try in the signal path of this amp, and we came up with a really cool package I think that you guys will really like as an upgrade. But don't get me wrong, if you don't get that upgrade, the stuff we put in here stock is still really good. Like, it's, you know, we're not skipping on quality anywhere, regardless of which package or which options we'll have available, and you folks end up ordering with this. One other thing worth mentioning that I failed to mention earlier is this will also have a tube cage. So you see these posts here and here. You can see there's in the back here. Those will accept pins on a tube cage that will just come down and set on posts into those locations there, and kind of held in with a good amount of friction. So it'll just lift up or slide down on posts into those receptacles or those sockets. That's in the works and will be available very soon, but we didn't want to delay, you know, showing off this amplifier any longer and kind of getting it ready for orders. So anyway, with that, thanks everyone for watching. It's been a 3.5 or 4 year long journey from kind of inception to where we are now with this product. The longest development product by far for bandwidth audio, and the most expensive by probably an order of magnitude. So really a lot of design effort went into this, and I hope you guys appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and take care.